Peter chapter 2. 1 Peter chapter 2. We've been doing the series in 1 Peter. We've called it Hope for Exiles. Hope for Exiles. That's basically what this book is all about. We're going to see it again this morning. And Peter is writing to people who are suffering in their faith and suffering for their faith and suffering for other reasons as well, as we're going to see more and more as we go on in this letter. And Peter is writing to offer hope. And even as we suffer, and even as we go through all of our various hard times, as I'm sure we all are, in some way or another, there is hope. There's encouragement, there's strength, and there's so much in this letter that we're seeing week after week. And in fact, this morning, we actually come to a transition point in the letter. And, 1 Peter, this letter, actually follows the pattern of most of the New Testament letters. I don't know if you know that there is a pattern in most of the New Testament letters. Most of the New Testament letters are divided into two sections. The first section is basically who you are. The second section is what you should do as a result of who you are. So first, who you are in Christ, all that Christ has done for us and what we are, the transformation that has come inside of us through Christ. We've been talking about all those things, identity and so on in these last number of weeks. And then, after that, what should we do now? This demands a change of life, a change of identity, a change of person, a transformation inside requires a transformation of our behavior outside. And Bible scholars, theologians, they call this indicative and imperative. Indicative, what is? Imperative, what should be done now as a result of this. Okay, so we're coming right to that point in this letter where that transition is happening now from who we are to practically what should we be doing. But before Peter gets into the practical section, so the next 3 Sundays, we're going to be talking about how to deal with a difficult government. That's going to be next week. That should be interesting. And then after that, how to deal with a difficult boss. The week after that, how to deal with a difficult husband. Oh, that's even more interesting. Okay, so all these things, and then we're just talking more about suffering after that. So all these things are coming up after this. But before Peter gets into this second half, this practical section, if you want to call it that, of his letter, he has these 2 verses that are kind of like the transition, but they're more than a transition between these 2 sections of the letter. In many ways, they are a summary of the letter. This is, in a very clear, concise way, Peter summarizes where we've been, where we're going in these 2 verses, and just lays it out there. And so these are very important verses, maybe the most important verses in the whole letter. And so I thought for the time that we have this morning, before we go to communion and all that this morning, we'll just look at just these 2 verses. Okay? And so 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 11 and 12. Let me just read them again, even though they've already been read. So this is 1 Peter chapter 2, starting in verse 11. It says, "Dear friends, I urge you, as foreigners and exiles, to abstain from sinful desires, which wage war against your soul. Live such good lives among the pagans that, though they accuse you of doing wrong, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day that He visits us." Okay, so 3 things that Peter is talking about here. Again, who we are, what we should do. So summary again, who we are. Again, summary, what we should do is he's going to expand that in the second half of this letter. And then the results. What will be the results? Okay, as we do these things. So first of all, who we are, and we see it again right here. We've talked about it in the last few weeks. Beginning of verse 11. "Dear friends, I urge you as what? Foreigners and exiles." Foreigners and exiles. Some of your versions may say strangers. Some of them even say aliens. Some of the old translations, foreigners and exiles. The idea, again, as we've talked about, is that this world, as we know it, is not our home. This world, as we know it, is not our home. The Bible tells us very clearly that we are citizens not of India or America or Canada or any other country on earth. We are citizens of heaven in Christ. Our true home, our true citizenship is in heaven. So what is this life? What is this world? What is this place that we are? Well, it's just a temporary transit place. Teresa's friend, our friend, Jessie, just came here yesterday, and she was coming from America, and she transited through London, Heathrow Airport, and she was saying that she had a 10-hour layover in London, which she didn't realize, I guess with the timing and all that. But then, this is, it's kind of not the funnest time, to be stuck in an airport, and it's not really enough time to get out, and you're just there. 10 hours, just kind of killing time, maybe catching a nap, or, seats are not so comfortable, and almost in a way, that's what this life is, isn't it? She didn't get on the plane and pay all those thousands of dollars to go and sit in the airport in London. Right? She has a destination where she's headed to. And that makes the transition, it's not fun, it's not pleasant, perhaps, especially when that transit, that wait is long, it's just a wait. It's temporary, we understand that. It's the same thing in this life. 70, 80, 90, maybe 100 years that God gives us, it's nothing. It's like 10 hours in London on your way to your true destination. And in our case, our true home, which is in heaven, which will be with God forever and ever and ever. 10,000 billion trillion years from now, we're going to be there. And when we look back at this life, it seems like so long, decades perhaps of suffering and hardship, and it'll just be like a blip, won't it? My dad is 85 years old now, and we keep reminding him that he's very old. But it's interesting, as I was thinking about it, I'm 45 years old, and my kids, I can't imagine being 85. My kids can't imagine being 45. And they keep reminding me about how old I am. 6-year-olds, 8-year-old, 10-year-old, 45? That is like, it's incomprehensible that somebody could be that old. In fact, I was telling them, we were talking about all these things the other day, and I was telling them, I remember when I was a kid looking ahead to the year 2000. And I remember I was going to be 23 years old in the year 2000, and I couldn't imagine being 23 years old, and it's going to go from 19-something to 2000, and what is that going to mean? And, we're going to be flying in aircraft or ships or, whatever to different planets or who knows what. It seems like so far away. Now, 2000 is long gone. We're almost on this side of 2000 as long as I was on that side of 2000. It just goes by so quickly, and that's the way life is. And if we just grasp that, the shortness of life. Life is short. Eternity is long. It's so long. It just changed everything, doesn't it? It just completely changes your perspective on life, every aspect of life, especially as you go through suffering, as you go through pain, as you go through hardships. Life is short. Eternity is so long. And again, this is what Peter reminds his readers, and he reminds us. God is reminding us today again, at least one more time this morning. We're talking about this again and again and again. Life is short. Eternity is long. We are foreigners in this world. That's why we never quite fit in. That's why we can never be totally happy also. We can never be completely comfortable in this life, in this world. We're not meant for this place the way it is right now. We're moving. Like Jessie, 10 hours in London. Right? We can do it. This is not our true home. Just here for a very short time. And so, in light of that, what should we do now? And this is now, we're getting into the second. Oh, by the way, let me just skip this for now. I think we've talked about this before. what should we do? What should we do as a result of this? Two things that Peter says here, one negative and one positive, okay? Again, look at verse 11. Dear friends, I urge you, as foreigners and exiles, now the negative one first, to abstain from sinful desires which wage against our soul. What should we do now? Foreigners, we're exiles, this world is not my home, the world that I'm living in right now, the way it is right now, I'm just on a temporary transit here. What should I do? First thing Peter says is abstain from sinful desires. Abstain from sinful desires. And it's not just abstain from sinful desires. The next line there at the end of verse 11, which wage against your soul. And I was just meditating on that in these last few days, and I just resonated with it. Don't you feel that in your soul, in the deepest part of who you are? There is a war going on. There's a war going on. The only war that's happening in the world today is not in Russia and Ukraine. It's happening in your soul. Can you just imagine? And again, no wonder I feel so uncomfortable and I can't settle down, and no wonder I'm so restless and discontent and so confused even. So often there's a war. That's the word that's used, isn't it? There's a war going on inside of us. What is this war that's happening inside of us? Well, Peter just said, it's a war of desires. These are the kinds of words and ideas that when you're just reading the Bible, you just kind of read it and say, yeah, we're foreigners and exiles, don't sin, okay, I shouldn't sin, yeah, got it, okay, let's keep going. But Peter goes deeper. Sinful desires. The war is being waged at the level of desires. So important. At the core of who we are desiring creatures. Desiring creatures. Another way to say that is that we are basically lovers. Not necessarily in the romantic sense, but in every sense. We're not primarily thinkers or doers or even believers. We're primarily lovers, desirers. We want, we desire, we long for things, we have passions inside of us, and we're always moving in the direction of our desires. It doesn't matter how disciplined you are, how well-intentioned you are, how self-controlled you are, how educated you are, you're always moving to what you want. That's the way we are. Always moving in the direction of our desires. That's where the war is being waged. It's not just being self-controlled or not doing this or being disciplined. All that is important, but at the end of the day, what do you want? What do you really want? That's what you're going to end up doing. And of course, it's God. Where do these desires come from? It's God Himself who put these desires inside of us. Right? God is the creator of desire. And not only did God create desire, but He created all these good things for us to desire. This world that is full of such amazing things, such desirable things, like family, and friends, and beautiful places, and music, and food, and laughter, and things to see, and things to do, things to taste and touch and enjoy. God made all of these things because He loves us. And all of these things ultimately are to lead us back to Him. The giver of all these good gifts and And He ultimately should be, and we were created that He would be our ultimate desire, that He would be our ultimate treasure. That the most beautiful one, the most glorious one, the most desirable one, that He would be the one that we would long for and love and be passionate about, and that all of these good things that He's created for us to enjoy would lead us again and again back to Him. Right? And if you just think about that, desiring creatures, creatures with these desires, these passions, and God is the most beautiful, the most attractive, the most desirable being of all, and all these good gifts that He gave us. And as we do that, we're very careful to thank Him and to glorify Him as we enjoy all these good gifts that the giver has given to us as children. It all seems very simple, doesn't it? Just do it. Enjoy it. It's all for you. Given by God because He loves you. What's the problem? What's going wrong? Well, this is where the war comes in. The Bible tells us that we've got three great enemies of our soul. We can say them as the flesh, the world, and the devil. And the flesh is our own sinful nature. And the world, which offers everything else but a little bit off. And the devil, who keeps kind of whispering in our ears, in our minds, and in our hearts, just try it. And now there's a war going on. Instead of just enjoying the good gifts that God has given us, and glorifying and thanking Him, and living a happy life, simple life, right now, all these desires of our sinful nature, and the world is encouraging, and the devil is whispering, tempting, saying, yeah, okay, you can do that, you can enjoy that, and give glory and thanks to God for that, but how about that other person? Oh, just see what they have. And how is it that they have that? The money in the house, or that car, and the wife, or the husband, and his kids, that job, that position. And really, you're really satisfied with just this? And isn't there so much more? And now there's competition coming, and there's comparison coming, there's jealousy, and envy, and there's bitterness that's growing. And that simple, happy life with God, and these good things that He gave us to enjoy and to glorify Him, and to live with Him, and all those. That simple, happy life is now getting all twisted, and this is how it works, right? And that money, sex, relationships, friendships, job, work, possessions, food, all these things now, instead of just enjoying them and giving glory to God for them, we're now overindulging in them, and now we're comparing with other people, and now this unhappiness and this discontentment is coming in, and now there's war. Our souls are in war. And as I was thinking about this, Peter said, we're foreigners, we're exiles, we're just kind of moving through it, and there's these desires that are now creeping in, and it reminded me of taking my daughter, 3-year-old daughter, Priya, to the grocery store, which I hate to do, because as we're just going through the aisles, she's grabbing randomly. Why are you doing this? Just walk, right? We're trying to get to the other side. We're trying to get to the checkout counter. You don't need to be grabbing everything. And yet this is how it is, even for us. We're just in this world very temporarily. It's just moving through. And now, instead of just kind of enjoying a little bit, as we're on our way to our final destination, we're trying to grab the world, the flesh, the devil, all encouraging more and more and more, and you've got to have this, and you're never going to be happy until you do it. All those kinds of things, simple desires. A simple desire for God and His good gifts, now a desire for everything else, and an over-desire for everything else, and forgetting about God. This is how it works. Peter says, no, abstain. think about, not just what you do, or even what you think, but your desires. The great church father, St. Augustine, said our fundamental problem is disordered loves, disordered desires. I love certain things too much, and I love the things that I should be loving not enough. I don't love God enough. I don't think about God enough. I don't delight in God enough. Right? Even the good things that He's given me, they don't lead me back to God enough. Right? All these other things. Peter says life is short. What a transit. This is temporary. God has still given us so much good things. Right? It's all for Him. Abstain from sinful desires. Wrong desires are those over desires. Okay, that's the first thing we should do. Abstain from sinful desires. Second thing he mentions here is live good lives among unbelievers. See this in verse 12? Live such good lives among the pagans that though they accuse you of doing wrong, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day He visits us. Live good lives. Live good lives. That's what he says. Live such good lives. Among the pagans, among the Gentiles, among the people who don't know God, again, unbelievers. Live good lives. I like that actually. It's a very broad word, live good lives. What does that really mean? But as I've been thinking about this, studying this, meditating on it, I think it basically means that people, when they see you, they should see an outstanding individual. Literally an outstanding individual, someone who stands out. Not because they're so smart, or because they're so successful, or they're so wealthy, or even because they're so nice as such, but because they're so good. They're so good. They're so good. There's something about them, right, that even people who don't know Jesus can see there's a quality, there's a character inside of them. They're confident, and yet they're humble. They're tender and kind, compassionate, caring, and yet they can also be tough when they need to be. They've got that strength inside of them. And they can discern, they've got the wisdom to know how to act at different times in the appropriate way. And at the same time, they're disciplined and they're hardworking. And they're forgiving also. And they're patient. And they're faithful. And these are qualities that people can just see. Doesn't matter what background they're from, they can appreciate. I think this is what Peter's saying. Such good lives. And so what does this mean practically? I think it means that in the office, who should be the best worker? Who should be the best colleague? Who should be the one that everybody wants on their team? Why? Because they're diligent. Maybe not the smartest, maybe not the most experienced or the most educated, most shrewd or the most clever, but they work hard. And they're diligent. And they're easy to get along with. They're not complicated. They're not gossipy. They're not complaining. They're faithful in their job. They're good bosses. They're submissive workers. Who should be the best neighbor on the street or in the apartment complex? This is where I was starting to feel convicted when I thought about this. It should be us. We're not just kind of ducking into home, waiting everybody else, just living my life and making sure that my home is clean and my family is happy. No. I'm a loving neighbor. I'm a caring neighbor. I'm a concerned neighbor. I'm an ideal neighbor. I care for others. I'm considerate. It's not just about me. I'm concerned with what's happening in the whole complex on the streets. How should I be with my family and my friends, especially those who don't know Christ. And I've got the most loving family member. And I'm going to make mistakes, and people know that I'm not perfect, but they see that I'm trying my best, and when I do make mistakes, I ask for forgiveness. And I don't create drama unnecessarily. And I'm encouraging, I'm supportive. And that's the kind of family member that I am. And the list is going to go on and on and on. What kind of church member am I? All the various kind of categories and situations of life. I'm living this kind of life, and this is hard. Right? Especially, you see this again, let's look at verse 12 again. Live such lives among pagans that, though they accuse you of doing wrong. So these people are not supportive. These are not supportive colleagues. These are not supportive bosses. This is not supportive government, right, that Peter is writing to, and the people that they're living in. They're accusing, they're looking for ways to catch you. This is not a nice work environment or home environment, family environment, societal environment. People are looking to accuse, and yet, even as they try to do that, even as they try to bring you down, even as they mock or reject, or they just can't deny, at least deep down inside, this person is a person of character. They're a person of integrity. They are disciplined, they are hardworking, they are caring, they are loving. Nobody can deny it. Wow. That is hard, isn't it? Especially in a hostile environment where people don't like you, they don't want to like you. Looking for any reason to accuse you or to chuck you out or gossip about you. How do you do this? How do you live a good life in that kind of environment? Well, you do it through the gospel. You do it through the Holy Spirit. And you do it through the strength that Jesus alone gives. And you do it through knowing who you are in Christ. You do it through a supportive community of other believers. You do it by prayer and seeking God's face day after day. In other words, you do it by living out all the things that we talk about in church every Sunday. That's how we do it. This is what the whole goal has been. So that we can live this kind of life, abstaining from sinful desires, and on the other hand, living such good lives that people can see it, and nobody can deny it, even the ones who are against you and trying to accuse you. So what is the result of this? The result, again, verse 12, live such good lives among the pagans that though they accuse you of doing wrong, now listen to this, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day He visits us. Two results here. Number one, people come to know God. People see God in your life. What is the purpose of being this outstanding person, or this good person living this good life among the world and among people who don't know Jesus? It's not so that you can win friends and influence people. It's not just so that you can be successful or just so that people will like you. No, it's a much greater purpose. It's a much greater desire that we have. People should see Jesus in me. People should see Jesus in you. Somebody said, right, you may be the only Jesus that people will ever see. You might be the only Bible that anybody ever reads. You might be the only example of a Christian or a church that anybody will ever walk into or come to know in their lives. People should see us. People should see Jesus in us. And hopefully that leads to conversations, because they cannot come to know God until they hear a message, good news of Jesus, and He died, and He rose again, and so on. But long before, now I want you to catch this, long before we say anything with our mouth, before we invite them to church, try to share the gospel with them, long before that, they've probably already kind of decided whether they like what you're about or not. Did you get what I just said? long before we say anything with our mouths, it's the kind of life that I want to live. Peter doesn't say anything about talking here. Interesting. He shows it by your good deeds, by what you do, your life. You can say anything you want, right? But our actions are screaming so loud. And the last thing, God is glorified. Again, that they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day He visits us. This is the ultimate goal, that God should receive the glory. That He should receive the praise, the honor, the adoration that He alone deserves. It's all by Him, and it's all for Him. And so you just see this result here. That people should come to know God through our lives, that God should be glorified through our lives. And you just think about that for a moment, you realize it's not about me at all. It's not about you. It's not about our success or our comfort or our advancement. It's all about others. It's all about God. And God has given us this purpose that is so much greater than just me. It's outward to the world, to others. I'm concerned about them. I want them to know the one true living God giver, and it's as high as heaven itself. And people should come to know God. People should be pointed to God through my life somehow, some way. They should see the difference in me. So, let me close this morning before we go to communion and just tell you a little story. I think someone who did this really well. And I was reminded of this person. Every night I read these little short missionary biographies with my 3 older kids, and they're really good, very encouraging, very inspiring. In fact, I would encourage you to do that, and I can give you some recommendations for some books or some websites, whatever, to look at if you want to read some of those stories to your kids. But this is a story of, excuse me, Ida Scudder. Does that name sound familiar? Maybe to some of you. Ida Scudder, let me tell you about her. She was an American. Her family, though, had lived in India for 3 generations. But she was determined that she would not live in India. She wanted to be back in America, where she was a citizen, and she got to do that as a teenager. She attended a private Christian boarding school in Massachusetts in the U.S., and after graduation, she planned to get married, to settle down in the U.S., but God had other plans. So now she's 20 years old, and she comes back to India. Her parents are living here because her mother is ill. So she comes back to help her father in his work and to help care for her mother. And the story says, one night when she was in India, everything changed. Now listen to this. In the middle of the night, a man came running to their home, begging for someone to care for his wife who was struggling in childbirth. Ida was barely out of her teens. She went to fetch her father, who was a doctor. But because of the cultural traditions that separated men and women, this is about 100 years ago or so, the man refused to allow another man to treat his wife. Did you get that? Everybody knows what's going on? Woman in childbirth, struggling. Her husband rushes to find the doctor. Instead, he meets this young girl. And she says, I'll go call my father and he can help. And she says, no. I'm not going to let a man see my wife who's struggling in childbirth. Okay, that's what's happening. His words were something to the effect of, it would be better that she died than be seen by a man. Ida was mortified that she could do nothing. She threw herself into prayer and wrestling with God about her life and her call. On that same night, 2 other men came to her parents' house with the exact same response, and they departed with the same request. They departed with the same response. The next morning, she was horrified to learn that all 3 mothers and their babies had died, all because there was no female doctor available to them. In that moment, she gave up all thoughts of marriage. She never married. And a comfortable life. later she wrote, I think that was the first time I saw God face to face, and all the time it seemed that He was calling me into this work. So what does she do? She goes back to the US, she gets trained as a doctor, she comes back to India, she starts a tiny medical dispensary and clinic for women at the Lord. Giving a hint of where this is going. Within 2 years, she treats 5,000 patients. The clinic soon became the Mary Tabor Shell Hospital. Then realizing that it would be impractical to go on alone in her fight to bring better health care to India's women, she decided to open a medical school for girls only, which everybody said that is never going to work. South India, more than 100 years ago, medical school for girls. And yet, over time, a lot of hard work, this eventually became what? CMC Vellore. Okay, we've got a picture of CMC Vellore here, which is now the largest Christian hospital in the world. And I think you probably know this, its medical school is one of the premier medical colleges in India. Maybe the best, at least the top 2 or 3 for sure. Right? And people are still coming to faith there. This is a beautiful thing. I visited this CMC Vellore a few years ago. I was just amazed how, even after so many years, how just the atmosphere of Christ is still in this place. And Uncle Taneja is our very own testimony of someone who was there and came to faith in Jesus. Then later in life, different background, even after so many years, and I'm sure the testimonies would go into the hundreds and thousands of people who have been encouraged, influenced, impacted, come to faith through this hospital. Again, just a girl. Just a girl who said, life is short, needs are great, I can do something, let me do something. And now we see the results. It's so amazing. So, finally, what should we do now? Very quickly, remember you're a foreigner and in exile. Life is short, eternity is long. Desire what is good. Remember, you're desiring creatures fundamentally. Desire. Love. What do you love? Love what is good. Desire what is good. Abstain from sinful desires and finally live a good life. Desire what is good. Live a good life, especially among the unbelievers. Though they accuse you, they will see your good deeds and glorify God on the day that He visits us. Why don't we bow our heads and close our eyes?